The night she offers her cattle, the desert holds its breath. Wind slips through dry grass like a whisper, and a single lantern swings from the porch of a small homestead that looks more like a prayer than a house. Far off, a coyote calls. Ah! Second answers. Between those thin cries, a woman stands in the doorway, wrapped in a shawl, counting the slow steps of her own courage. On the table behind her, a tin cup cools beside a folded map and a string of red beads, every small thing she still owns with a story. The herd shifts in the corral, hooves knocking the rails, as if they know a choice is coming that will change what they exist for. She closes her eyes and says, quiet and steady, "Take my cattle, only give me a child." She is speaking to the dark, to fate, to anyone who will listen. She is speaking, most of all, to the writer she has invited to. Come the Apache who camped tonight beyond the cottonwoods by the river bend. By morning, the sun will burn the sky clean. But for now the land is soft with shadow. The woman walks to the edge of the corral and runs her hand along the fence. The boards are warm from the day. This herd is the last leftover of a life that has already fallen apart, the last wealth she did not burn for fire or feed. The calves breathe little clouds into the dark. She counts them by touch the way a keeper counts beads, calming her hands by naming what can be touched. 12. 12 is not much to some, but to her it is the difference between leaving and staying, between giving up and trying again. She whispers to a sway-backed cow and feels the ground steady under her boots. People in the settlement say she is strong. They say it with a kind of shrug, as if strength is something one just finds beside the well. They do not know that strength, for her, is simply what happens when there is no one left to share the work. Her partner rode east, chasing a promise of pay and a rumor of easy land that kept moving like a mirage. He took warm words and left cold mornings behind. Letters came. For a while, then they stopped. She learned to make silence do the work of a reply. She learned that an abandoned wife is still a wife, just one who ties her own knots and learns the weight of a gate. Out on the far ridge, a campfire winks through the cottonwoods. The river runs there, slow and low, threading the valley like a silver seam. She knows, from weeks of walking that shore with careful steps, that an Apache camp rests there tonight. Families, horses, elders who listen before they speak, children who run without shoes and laugh in bright short bursts. She has seen them from a distance and kept her hands open by her sides. She has set out gifts, cornmeal, a tin mirror, an old pocket knife with a good hinge, and a blue ribbon that once held her hair on her wedding day. Each small offering disappeared by morning, and in their place she sometimes found little bundles of sage or a strip of soft leather tied in a knot that meant safe passage. Small, quiet bridges built without words. What she wants is not a bargain of flesh, not a trade of blood. She wants a promise to protect a life that has not yet found its home. For months she has heard a story that walks the trail faster than a horse. A child without kin sheltered by the camp by the river. A child who survived a fever that took a whole wagon team moving west. A child whose first memories are of stars and wind and the hush of many hands carrying at once. She does not want to take, she wants to join. To belong to someone and have someone belong to her. Every night she wakes at the hour when the land is most still, and in that silence she hears a heartbeat that is not hers. Or maybe it is her own heart, becoming bigger in the quiet. The word for that feeling is simple: mother. The settlement has its own talk about the Apache, talk that falls too easy and cuts too deep. She has learned to ignore stories shaped by fear. Those stories keep people small. Out here, small is dangerous. She has watched from the cottonwoods as the camp teaches mourning to the children, how to listen to the river, how to move in a circle so no one is left outside the warmth, how to share the weight of water and wood. She has seen patience that looks like strength and strength that looks like patience. She has seen kindness done with a nod and a glance, no need for loud speeches. In the wind, a woman's laugh carried across the bend and landed in her chest like a bird, light and sure. No one in the settlement laughs like that Dot at the trading post last week. She left a message with a man who knows how to carry words gently. "Tell them I come with respect," she said. "Tell them I come alone. Tell them I bring a peace offering." He watched her for a long breath and then nodded once. He did not ask why. He did not have to. People who live between dust and horizon learn to understand, the unsaid. That same day she polished her saddle and mended the strap on her water skin. At dusk she walked to the corral, looked her cattle in the eyes, and said the truth out loud for the first time. If love is a roof, it needs someone under it. If love is a table, it needs two sets of hands. If love is a story, it needs a listener. And if a child lives within the circle by the river and has room in that circle for one more, she will come with all she is and all she has to keep that circle strong. She knows the risk. She knows the weight of history hanging on this moment like a storm that may break or drift. The desert keeps a careful ledger. It remembers every promise and every lie, every fence that went up without asking, every path smoothed by goodwill. She closes the corral gate and slips the rope through the loop. The knot holds on the first pull. The night smells of sweet dust and mesquite. She tucks the red beads into her pocket and starts toward the cottonwoods, her lantern low so the light falls only where her feet will land. Each step is a small, stubborn prayer. On the trail the wind changes and carries the scent of wood smoke and horses. Then she hears it, the soft pad of hooves, steady and unhurried, a sound like a drum played with open hands. She stops and waits. In the space between heartbeats the riders appear, shapes cut from the dark, moving with the kind of quiet that comes from knowing the land better than your own story. They drop a few paces away. No one lifts a weapon. No one has to. The night does the speaking first. The one at the front is older, his hair braided with a thin strip of leather that gleams pale in the moonlight. His face is carved by years of sun and wind, but his eyes are calm as river stones. Beside him, a younger rider eases his horse a step forward and looks at her without judgment, like a scout who has already read the map of what she intends. In the trees behind them, she hears the soft shift of others waiting, families at the edge of their circle, measuring the shape of this meeting. She lowers her lantern so they can see her hands are empty. She says good evening in the few words she has learned, careful, honoring. The elder inclines his head, and that small motion opens the air between them like a door. She does not tell her whole story. She does not need to. She speaks only what matters. She says she has cattle, 12 head, strong and calm. She says she can bring water when the river runs low and wood when the nights turn hard. She can mend leather and bake bread, boil herbs and stitch blankets, listen to elders and learn what she does not know. She says she has a roof with room under it, a table with room around it, hands that are empty but ready. She says, steady and plain, that if there is a child among them who needs a family, she will give everything she has to build that family right. Not as a purchase, not as a trade. As a bond, and that she understands bonds are made by deeds, not speech. The elder does not rush his reply. He studies her with the patience of someone who has watched seasons change and knows that haste is where mistakes are born. He lifts his chin toward the cottonwoods, toward the sound of water on stone. Come, he says at last, his voice low, careful with the night. We talk by the river. The younger rider falls in beside her on foot, leading his horse, and together they walk toward the bend. In the grass, crickets start up their thin music dot at the water's edge. The camp reveals itself. A small fire breathes softly at the center. A circle of figures forms in the glow, women, men, elders, and a few tousled heads peeking from behind shoulders. A pot hangs over coals. The smell of cedar moves like a thread through steam. She feels her own breath slow to match the rhythm of the place. No one stares. No one turns away. The circle widens, as circles do when there is room for more. A woman steps forward with a bundle in her arms. The bundle is not large, but it fills the space between her hands with purpose. The woman's hair is tied back with a strip of red cloth almost the color of the beads in the visitor's pocket. The woman nods once to the elder, once to the younger. Ryder then looks at the stranger in the shawl who smells of lantern smoke and dust and long roads. There is a softness in her gaze that is not weakness. It is strength that has already chosen its ground. No words rise for a moment. The visitor rests her palms open at her sides, palms that have learned the weight of rope and skillet, the ache of loss, the shape of hope. The woman with the bundle lifts the edge of the cloth just enough for the firelight to kiss small fingers. 5. A hand that curls and uncurls at the world, testing its grip. The child does not cry. The child is awake, watching the flame like it is learning the language of light. In that instant, every road behind the visitor narrows to a single line, and every path ahead opens into 100 uncertain trails. She understands that this is not a moment to win or lose. It is a moment to honor. She takes a breath that feels like stepping into a river where the current is gentle but sure. "I came to ask," she says, "and I will accept what you choose." The elder nods, and the circle settles into quiet talk. Voices low, thoughtful, turning over what has been offered and what has been asked. Weighing more than cattle, more than need measuring trust. Time thins. Stars turn. The fire goes from flame to glow. The visitor feels the red beads warm in her pocket, as if the past itself has heat left to give. Somewhere a horse stamps, and somewhere else a child's laugh flutters, quick and bright, then hides again. The elder raises his hand, and the circle stills. Eyes meet eyes in the hush that follows. The woman with the bundle shifts her weight. Ready to step, ready to speak, yet the night, as if it senses the edge of a choice, holds everything a heartbeat longer. And right there, at the lip of decision, a sound rises from beyond the cottonwoods, a second pair of hooves on the trail, fast and urgent, a voice calling from the dark, carrying news that could turn the river's course before anyone can answer. Circle tilts toward the sound, like grass leaning into a wind it trusts and fears. The elder's hand stays raised, but his eyes shift to the trees. The younger rider steps out of the light and melts into shadow. The woman with the bundle does not move, though her shoulders tighten as if holding a quiet brace. The visitor hears the hooves break and slow, hears breath pulled hard through a horse's nose, hears the whisper of a rein sliding over leather. Then a shape breaks from the cottonwoods, a scout, narrow and fast, a good horse under him, and river mud up to the knees. He stops at the edge of the glow and bows his head to the elder. Words flow that the visitor does not know, but the tone is clear, careful, urgent, though not unkind. The elder listens without changing his breath. When the scout has finished, the old man looks at the woman with the bundle, then at the stranger, who came from the homestead, then back at the river. The fire shows the lines at the corners of his mouth, lines made by sun and thought. He nods once. The scout lets out a long breath that sounds like a horse easing a sore leg. The younger rider returns, leading the lathered horse to water. He does not look at the visitor, not yet. He sets his stance between her and the dark, as if that is simply where he stands when news moves in. The elder speaks a few words to the circle, slow and clear, so that even the smallest ears can carry them. The visitor hears one word she knows: settlement. The rest she must guess by the shape of faces. No one flinches. No one rises. The fire crackles and settles its ash, Small bright sighs. No decision comes. Not yet. The elder folds his hands and waits for the night to give more. Waiting is a kind of work. The visitor knows that work. She stands easy so her silence does not add weight where there is already plenty. The woman with the bundle shifts, and the child's small hand presses against the cloth, steady and curious. The visitor feels a memory flare and settle, like a match cupped against wind. There had been another small hand once, in a house far east, before the road, before the dry light of this desert. A hope that bloomed early and went quiet before. It had a chance to speak. The doctor had said it was no one's fault, and the neighbors had said time would help. Time had helped her stand up. It had not helped her forget. She had learned the land instead. Learned the shape of the frontier wind against the eaves. Learned how cattle talk with their feet. Learned how a river, even low, holds the bend it loves. She had learned the patient code of the Apache camp from a distance. A single feather tied high meant a path kept open. A small ring of stones on a stump meant a cold fire, safe to rest beside. A ribbon of red meant a woman's hands had tended this place and would tend it again. The first time she found a bundle of sage left where she had set cornmeal, she had pressed it to her face and breathed in a peace she had not known in years. She kept her steps light after that. She kept her voice low. Respect is a language too. Scout speaks again, shorter now, and looks toward the north as if he can see through cottonwood and dark. The younger rider answers with a nod that is almost a smile. The visitor hears one more word she knows, cattle. The word falls into her like a stone into a well. Cattle are the last piece of the old life that still held shape. 12 head. Calm, good walkers, strong shoulders, a steady line. She had offered them without flinching because the idea of a child in her arms had more weight than a corral full of hooves. But the herd is still her work, still her promise of bread and salt, still her peace offering. If something moves toward them in the dark, if someone from the settlement has read her plan across the face of the land and sniffed at the chance to profit, then the night is changed. The woman with the bundle lifts her eyes and studies the visitor. There is no threat in the look, only measure. The visitor keeps her hands open, palms easy, fingers relaxed, the way she had been taught to approach a horse that carries worry under its skin. She thinks of the trading post where she left her message. The man who carried words was careful, but words after they leave your mouth have their own road. A stray ear at the bar. A tired hand that talks too much over a deck of cards. A promise turned into a rumor turned into a chance. On the frontier, chance walks faster than truth. The younger rider steps closer and speaks in a tone the visitor can follow. He tells her there are men at the edge of the flats by her homestead. 3, maybe 4. Their horses are thin and hungry. Their lantern was hooded until just now. They asked at a camp farther north if anyone had seen a woman with a small herd and a stubborn heart. The scout did not answer. The men looked at tracks that led toward the cottonwoods. Then they laughed as if they had found a trail to money. The younger rider says this without heat. The visitor's chest tightens anyway. The elder says a few careful things in reply. The younger rider translates when needed, slow and plain. The camp will not let strangers follow the river into their sleep. The camp will keep the child within the circle while the circle considers. The camp will not trade a life like a rope or saddle. They will talk at moon's turn and again at dawn. The visitor hears in the shape of the words what she already knows. The answer will come when the answer is ready. She nods. Her nod says she understands, says her request is not a demand, says she knows that trust and family are not made in one night or with one gift. Her nod also says she will stand if standing is needed. She thinks of the map on her table and the red beads in her pocket. The beads came from her wedding day, bright against her hair, while the preacher spoke of vows like plow lines and the work of two hands together. The day was hot. The cake was sweet enough to make you blink. They danced until the grass gave up and flattened under their boots. She had kept the beads through all the miles after that, through dust and snow, through a spring that shook the windows and a summer that cracked the creek bed. She keeps them now because they remember for her. They remind her that joy is a kind of memory you have to feed. The child shifts and lets out a sound that is not a cry and not a laugh. Something in between. The woman's face softens. The visitor's eyes follow the small shape under the cloth, and she feels a pull, gentle and fierce all at once. She knows the rules of the settlement, the loud talk and fixed ideas, the way. A simple act like asking to adopt a child from a neighboring camp can turn into a storm of opinion. She has heard men at the post speak as if people are borders to be marked, not hearts to be held. She has learned to step around such talk. She is not naive, but she is not hard either. She believes a family can be made of more than one kind. Of story, the scout moves again. He lifts a hand, 2 fingers raised, a signal that spreads through the circle without a sound. The camp shifts as one body. Children are guided to bedrolls. Horses are led to the far side of the bend. The fire is trimmed down, just enough to keep the cold off, but not enough to throw a long shadow. The visitor is shown a place to sit near the water, a woven blanket offered with the simplicity of a cup of water. Gifts here are not speeches. They are deeds. She thanks them with her eyes and settles, feeling the river speak in the stones beside her. The younger rider sits not far from her and tells small things to fill the space. He speaks of the drought 2 summers past and the way the camp moved in a wide circle to follow what the land would offer. He speaks of an old woman who teaches the children to read the wind by how smoke turns and how birds land. He speaks of a boy who can find a lost horse by listening, and a girl who can braid leather so fine you can run it through a ring. His words fold the visitor into a bigger story. She offers small stories in return. She tells of a neighbor who showed her how to set a broken fence post with a brace and a wedge. She speaks of a midwife she met on a river trail who said that love, like water, will find its own level. They do not press each other for more. This is not the time for demands. It is the time for knowing just enough to keep from being strangers. Across the river, a night bird calls once, then again. The elder stands with 2 others at the edge of the trees, still as stones. The woman with the bundle has sat, queen quiet, her back straight, the child warm against her. The visitor wonders what promise that woman once made to herself on a hard night, wonders what road brought her here, what losses she folded into the work of living. The visitor does not ask. Some questions are better carried than spoken, and sometimes the caring itself is the answer you need. The younger writer tells her that the child came to the camp last winter, carried in by a man whose hand shook with fever and grief. He had taken the little one from a broken wagon where no one else rose when he called. He knew enough to know he did not know enough. He brought the child to the river circle and laid him in the heat of many hands. The man's eyes cleared after a week. He left food and a good knife and moved on toward the mountains with a face that looked like a door closing. The camp does not hold anyone who does not choose to stay. But the camp holds a child until a circle forms tight around them. The visitor listens and feels the desert night lean closer, the way a friend leans closer when the story matters. She thinks of the men on the flats, the thin horses, the hooded lantern. She thinks of the word cattle and the way it fell in her chest. She thinks of debt, of chance, of the kind of people who follow lantern light not to help, but to count what they can take. She thinks of her own partner, far east or gone or something in between, and the letters that stopped like a stream quenched by dust. She wonders if any of this is tied together, if old choices are sending new riders into her life. She does not sleep. She does not need to. The river does the resting for her. Toward the deep part of night, the ember glow turns from orange to a kind of soft silver. The camp moves less. The wind eases down. The elder returns to the fire and takes a seat that looks like it has always been his. He studies the visitor in that careful way of his, then looks at the younger rider, then at the woman with the child. He says a few words. The younger rider translates without hurry. At dawn they will speak again. At dawn, the camp will answer her request, not in a yes or no, but in a path. If there is a path with room for her, they will show it. If not, they will show her a different way that still keeps the circle whole. That is how it is done here. Before the visitor can answer, a light moves where the cottonwood's thin. Not the soft pulse of a camp ember, not the sudden flare of dry brush. It is a lantern, yes, but held high and swinging, and behind it the shape of more than one horse. The scout rises without sound. The younger rider stands at the edge of the glow with a hand lifted, neither inviting nor forbidding, simply present. The elder does not move. The woman with the child tightens the cloth and keeps her seat. The lantern comes on slow, then slows more, as if its holder has seen what he needed to see. Between two trees, the light stops. A voice reaches the river bend, careful, strained, carrying the uneven beat of someone who has ridden hard. It calls a single word that belongs equally to prayer and plea. The visitor feels it strikes something deep in her bones. The camp goes very still, so still the river itself seems to hold its breath. No one answers. Not yet. The voice calls again, softer, as if speaking into a room where a sleeping child lies. The visitor stands without meaning to, and the red beads in her pocket knock together once, like a quiet bell you only hear when the night is ready to change. Lantern sways between the trees like a restless star, and the voice carries again across the river bend. It is rough, but not sharp, and the words roll in a tone that almost asks more than it demands. The visitor cannot see the face behind the light, but something in the sound stirs a memory she wishes had stayed buried. The elder shifts slightly in his seat, his eyes narrowing as he listens with the patience of stone. Around the circle, the camp does not move. Only the children breathe soft against their mother's shoulders, and the fire sighs low, the coals glowing like a heartbeat under Ashdot. The younger rider takes one step toward the sound, his stance calm but alert. He speaks back across the water, short words that fall steady as rocks in a stream. The reply from the lantern holder comes slower, as if the rider on the other side is weighing what to say and what to keep back. The visitor cannot catch the full meaning, but she hears her own name, clear and sharp as a spur. Her breath catches. Whoever is out there knows her, or at least knows enough to call for her like they own the right. The camp looks at her, not in judgment but in measure. She feels the weight of those eyes and knows her past has arrived, carrying its own kind of smoke. The red beads in her pocket seem heavier now, as if the thread binding them has twisted with the sudden pull of history. She thinks of the man she once called husband, of the letters that stopped, of the silence that filled every corner of her house. Could it be him? Could it be someone sent by him, or someone who crossed his path and carried his story like a burden? The possibility crawls cold down her spine. She does not move, not yet. A single step now could set a chain that cannot be unbroken. The scout slips into the trees, vanishing like a shadow leaving the ground. The younger rider waits, head turned slightly as if listening to the ground itself. The elder finally lifts his hand, and silence folds even tighter. The lantern beyond the trees dips, then lifts again, signaling like a question. The rider with it shifts in his saddle. Another horse stamps the dirt behind him. More than one, maybe three, maybe four. Their figures blur with the night, but their intent hangs heavy in the air. They are not lost travelers. They are looking for something or someone. The visitor remembers the men the younger writer spoke of, thin horses and hooded lanterns on the flats by her homestead. If these are the same men, then they have followed her trail with a hunger that is not only for cattle. Maybe they heard her plea carried to the trading post. Maybe they smelled her desperation. Maybe they came for her but saw a chance for something more. On the frontier, people like that walk both sides of the fire. They talk of trade, with one hand while keeping the other hand ready for a rope or a gun. The woman with the bundle leans closer to the fire, shielding the child from the cold wind. The visitor's eyes catch the movement and feel the ache of what she wants most: protection, a circle that holds, a bond that cannot be broken by men with hungry eyes. Yet the very thing she has asked for may be the same thing that draws trouble to this place. She feels a twist of guilt and fear. Did she bring danger to the camp by daring to want too much? Or is the danger only the shadow that follows anyone who tries to build something true in a land that loves to test the strong? The younger writer speaks again across the river, his words harder now, sharper, cutting the space with warning. The voice behind the lantern laughs, a short sound that grates against the still night. It is not a laugh of joy, but of someone who sees no reason to hide his intent. The camp stiffens. Horses in the shadows toss their heads. The visitor feels the skin on her arms tighten as if the night itself has bristled. Then, from the far side of the circle, an elder woman speaks. Her voice is low, lined with age, but it carries in the hush like water spilling from a jug. She speaks to the elder by the fire, her words slow, deliberate, each one pressed into the earth. The visitor does not know the language, but she feels the weight of memory in it, the kind of story that has walked through generations. She knows enough to recognize that the woman is reminding them of something already written in their ways, how to handle a stranger who arrives with shadows behind them. The elder listens, his head bowed slightly, his face unreadable. The visitor's mind races. Who are these men really? What do they want with her? Do they know of her cattle, or do they carry some other claim? She cannot shake the thought that maybe her abandoned husband, wherever he is, left a trail of debt, promises, or grudges, and she is the one paying for it now. Or maybe it is simpler. Men with nothing left but hunger, chasing the scent of her herd across the flats. Either way, she knows the lantern swinging out there is a hook baited with trouble. The question is whether to step toward it or let the river keep its silence. The scout returns, soundless as mist. He murmurs to the younger writer, and for the first time the younger writer's expression hardens. He glances at the visitor, then back at the elder. More words pass, quick and quiet. The elder finally stands. He looks across the fire at the visitor, his gaze steady, holding both question and warning. It is her presence that has drawn the lantern to the bend, her story that has spilled into their circle. He does not speak blame, but the truth is clear. She must now choose how to stand in this moment. The visitor lifts her chin. She feels the desert inside her bones, the long days of silence, the weight of every fence post she hammered into hard ground. Every morning she rose alone. She knows she cannot walk away from this. She also knows she cannot solve it with a single word. The lantern sways again, closer now, as if the men have taken the silence for weakness. The visitor takes one step toward the river's edge. The camp does not stop her. They watch, as if waiting to see not just what she will say, but what she is made of. Her voice is steady, though her heart beats against her ribs like a trapped bird. She calls out into the night, giving no more than her name, nothing more. The lantern stills. The voice answers, softer this time, almost careful, and the sound of it stirs recognition deep in her chest, familiar, like a chord struck in an old song she once loved and then lost. She cannot yet place it, but it makes her knees weak. The Fire crackles. The elder lowers his head, listening. The camp leans forward without moving. The child stirs under the bundle and lets out a small sigh, as if sensing that the world has tilted and nothing will be the same when the sun rises. Voice from the dark drags across the water like a blade against stone. It calls her name again, slower this time, shaping each syllable as if it carries both promise and threat. The lantern jerks upward, and for an instant the light catches the outline of a face sharp cheekbones, a mouth pulled tight, eyes hollowed by miles of dust and hunger. Then the light drops low, hiding him again, leaving only the sound of horses shifting and leather groaning under restless weight. The visitor grips the edge of her shawl to keep her hands from shaking. That voice, it is not the man she once knew, but it carries the same roughness of someone who has walked too far with too little kindness. Memories of her husband still bite at her, but this is not him. Still, the familiarity in that tone churns her stomach as if fate has chosen a cruel echo to taunt her. She feels the circle watching, not with judgment, but with the quiet demand that she show who she is when the night tests her. The elder's gaze settles heavy on her, steady as stone. He does not speak, but his silence carries weight. The moment is hers to meet. The younger rider shifts slightly forward, one hand resting on the neck of his horse, ready but not yet drawn to action. The woman with the bundle holds her child closer, her face unreadable, her eyes sharp as flint. The fire's glow wavers as though it too waits for the answer. Across the river, another voice rises, rougher and younger, spitting words she cannot fully hear. The tone is enough. These men are not here for peace. They laugh low and mean, the sound carrying like a buzz of hornets across the bend. The scout whispers to the elder, his words clipped, his breath thin with urgency. The elder listens, then finally raises his hand. The camp responds in silence, horses shifted farther back, children guided deeper into shadow, elders standing firm at the edges of the circle. The fire is banked lower still, so the night becomes thick, hiding more than it shows. The visitor's chest tightens. She knows now these men want her cattle. They must have heard about her offer, about the herd she was willing to trade for a child. They came not to understand but to take. But their voices suggest more, something worse. They have tracked her, named her, claimed her as part of the bargain they think they can force. Her stomach knots with fear, but deeper still, with rage. She has already lost enough to abandonment. She will not lose herself again to men who speak only in hunger. The lantern swings closer. Hooves strike the shallow stones of the river, slow, testing. The water splashes, and the scent of wet earth rises sharp in the air. The younger rider steps forward, his voice cutting through the dark like a knife. His words are short, hard, final. A warning. A line drawn at the river's edge. Silence follows, deep enough that the river's current can be heard. Then a laugh breaks it. Harsh, ragged, the sound of men who do not respect warnings. The lantern lifts again, and behind it, more shapes move. Not 3, not 4, 5, maybe. More. Their horses edge forward, iron striking stone, echoing like thunder through the bend. The camp stiffens, though no one breaks formation. The elder lowers his hand at last, and the air thickens with the knowledge that what comes next may tear the night open. The visitor steps closer to the water, though her knees tremble. She knows if she shows fear now, it will feed the men across the river. She straightens her shoulders, the red beads pressing against her palm inside her pocket, grounding her in a memory of vows once made. She speaks, her voice steady, carrying across the water. She names herself. She tells them the cattle are hers, not theirs. She says the herd is already spoken for. The words fall heavy in the dark, a claim, a defiance. The men shift in their saddles, muttering to each other. One spits into the river, another curses. The leader, the one with the lantern, leans forward and answers in a tone that makes her skin crawl. He calls her foolish, says no woman can stand alone with cattle and expect them not to be taken. He says the camp cannot protect her forever, that the land itself eats the weak. His words are poison, meant to dig under her skin. Elder finally speaks, his voice deep calm, but carrying the weight of command. His words roll steady across the water, sharp with warning. The visitor does not understand every word, but the meaning is clear. The river is a border. The circle is a shield. Cross it, and the night itself will answer. The camp stands with her, for now. But the men laugh again, their hunger louder than their caution. The horses step deeper into the river, water splashing higher. The lantern swings wildly now, the light reflecting off wet stones like shards of fire. The visitor feels her breath catch. Every instinct in her says the moment is breaking, that violence is about to crack open like thunder. She glances at the child in the woman's arms, at the small hand curled in the firelight. Her chest aches with the force of her own need to protect, to belong, to build something stronger than fear. The younger rider tenses, his stance ready, his eyes fixed on the figures in the water. The scout slips once more into the shadows, vanishing toward the flank of the intruders. The elder lifts both hands now, palms out, not in surrender but in final warning. The circle behind him grows still as stone. The only sound is the river rushing, the horses pushing, the men laughing low as they cross closer to the bend. The visitor grips the beads so tightly the thread bites into her skin. She knows this moment is the edge of everything, the cattle, the child, the camp, her own future, all tangled in a single fragile breath. The men push forward, the lantern swinging higher, their shadows spilling across the water. The night feels ready to shatter. And just as the first horse's hooves strike the shallows of the riverbank, a cry tears through the dark from behind. The camp sharp, desperate, carrying news that none of them expect. The cry cut through the night like an arrow. It wasn't from the intruders in the river, it came from behind the camp, from the cottonwoods where the land dipped toward the open flats. The sound carried a sharp urgency, a warning meant to turn every head. The circle shifted, and for a moment, even the men in the water hesitated. The scout reappeared in the fire's glow, his chest heaving, his words spilling quick into the elder's ear. Whatever he said darkened the elder's face. The younger rider stiffened, his hand curling at his side. The visitor felt the weight of it before anyone translated. She didn't need words to know that something larger was moving in the dark. The men at the river were not alone. Their horses weren't the only ones leaving tracks on the flats. More were coming, perhaps already near, hidden in the folds of night. A plan was unfolding, one that stretched beyond cattle, beyond desperation. This was not just hunger. It was a raid. The elder's voice broke the silence, strong and low, carrying a command that rippled through the camp. Men and women moved with precision, guiding children deeper into the cottonwoods, away from the riverbank. The fire was nearly quenched, leaving only a red glow beneath blackened wood. The circle tightened around the visitor and the woman holding the child. No panic, no chaos. Only the quiet strength of people who had faced such nights before. Across the river, the intruders barked laughter, trying to mask their hesitation with bravado. Their leader lifted the lantern higher, but the darkness swallowed most of its reach. He called across again, mocking the elder's warning, claiming that no circle of families could stop the tide of men who wanted what was theirs. His words were swallowed by the wind, but the tone was clear. He believed fear would crack the camp before steel was drawn. The visitor, heart-pounding, stepped closer to the elder. Her voice came low, shaking but firm. "This is because of me," she said, though she knew he might not understand every word. My cattle, my choice. I brought them here. Her throat tightened. I'll stand in front. Let them come for me, not for the camp. The elder looked at her a long moment, his eyes like deep water. Then he shook his head once. Slowly, deliberately. He placed his hand over his chest, then gestured to the circle, then to her. The meaning needed no translation. You are inside now. Inside the circle, there was no giving one away to save the rest. The intruders urged their horses forward, splashing harder through the shallows. A younger rider stepped closer to the water, his voice fierce and sharp, shouting a warning that cut the night. The visitor caught fragments of the words, enough, stop, turn back. The men only laughed louder. One raised a rifle into the air, the lantern's light flashing against its barrel. Before the visitor could breathe, the sharp crack of another rifle answered, but not from the water. From the trees behind the intruders, flashes burst like lightning. The scout's warning had not been in vain. Others had circled around, unseen, and now their shots split the air. The intruders' horses screamed, rearing and thrashing in the river. The lantern swung wildly, fell, and hissed out in the water. Men cursed, shouted, fired blindly into the dark. The camp did not break. The circle held. The visitor ducked as shots echoed across the bend, her hands gripping the red beads like a prayer. She felt the younger rider push her back toward the fire's glow, his body between her and the chaos. The elder's voice rose above the noise, calling commands with steady power. The camp moved like a tide, flowing as one body, defensive, sure, unbroken. The intruders scrambled, their advantage slipping with every heartbeat. Horses thrashed against the current, men swore and fought to keep control, but the shadows pressing them from behind gave no ground. One man shouted her name again, desperate now, but his voice was no longer mocking. It was pleading, breaking under the weight of defeat. She froze. That tone somewhere inside, it was a memory of her husband, not the man who once vowed to stay, but the ghost of him after he left, hollow and lost. For a breath she wondered if it could be him after all, twisted by miles and failure. But the firelight caught the man's face as he flailed in the river, and she knew with final clarity, he was no husband, only another drifter wearing the same ruin. She felt no bond, only the bitter ache of what abandonment leaves behind. Fight lasted only minutes, though it felt like hours. At last the surviving men broke, retreating into the dark with their horses, leaving the river churning behind them. Silence followed, broken only by the rush of water and the distant echo of hooves fleeing across stone. The circle did not cheer. They simply stood, breathing as one, letting the quiet return to the bend. The elder lowered his hands. The younger rider let out a long breath and looked at the visitor, his eyes steady, his face unreadable but calm. The scout reappeared once more, nodding to show the danger had passed, at least for now. The woman with the child rose and came closer to the fire, her arms cradling the small bundle tighter. Though her gaze had softened, the visitor's knees nearly gave way. She sank to the ground, the bead still clutched in her fist. Her chest ached with more than fear. It was the weight of everything she had carried for so long alone. And now, in the hush after the storm, she felt the circle around her, not just watching but holding, not just protecting but claiming her as one of their own. The elder finally spoke, his words slow, certain. The younger rider translated. The cattle would remain hers, but their place could be within the circle if she chose. The child, too, would not be given like a prize or a trade. But if she stayed, if she proved herself by deeds and not only by words, the circle would not close against her. There could be a bond, a family, a home. Tears stung her eyes, though she did not let them fall. She nodded, her voice quiet but sure. Yes, she said, I will stay. I will prove it. The woman with the bundle stepped forward. She bent slightly, pulling the cloth aside just enough for the visitor to see the child's face clearly for the first time. The firelight kissed soft skin, wide eyes, and a mouth just beginning to form a smile. The child reached a tiny hand toward her, fingers curling in the air. The visitor's breath caught. She reached out slowly, letting her fingertip meet the child's palm. The hand closed tight around her, stronger than she expected. In that moment, the cattle, the men who fled, the miles of dust and silence, all of it fell away. What remained was the small weight of a hand in hers, the warmth of a circle that had not broken, the promise of something that could grow from this night forward. When dawn came, the river glowed gold, and the camp stirred with quiet voices and the smell of cedar smoke. The visitor stood with a younger rider at the edge of the water, watching the cattle move in the distance, their backs catching the morning sun. She knew the land would not grow easier. Danger would return. But she was not alone anymore. She touched the beads in her pocket, then looked back toward the circle where the child slept in the arms of the woman who had shared her place by the fire. She understood now. Family was not given, it was built. Not bought with cattle, not begged for in whispers, but forged in trust, in standing firm when the night pressed hardest. The younger rider nodded toward the herd. "They are safe now," he said. She nodded in return, her voice soft. "So am I." The river moved on, carrying the night's shadows away, leaving only light on the stones and the sound of a child breathing steady within the circle. The desert was still harsh, but it no longer felt empty. She had come asking for a child. What she found was something larger, a place, a people, and a bond stronger than fear. And with that, she finally felt the silence inside her break, replaced with the sound of belonging.